Welcome to the world of Indian aesthetics. Here, masters like Bharata and Abhinavagupta reveal the deep secrets of rasa and meaning. Let us explore this map of knowledge. Today, we are going to study Indian literary aesthetics. Together, we will explore the ideas of Rukti will appear. This begin our journey. So let's begin our journey.
A poem can make us cry, a story can stay with us for years, a play can make us feel love, fear, courage, wonder, or peace. Why does art affect us so deeply? More than 2000 years ago, an Indian thinker asked the same question. His name was Bharat Muni. The answer he gave became one of the greatest theories of art, literature, theater, and human emotions.
Drama is the imitation of life. It must create a state of emotional rupture.
Remarkable book called the Natyashastra. It is often called the fifth Veda because it brings together knowledge through stories, performance, music, and drama. Tradition tells us that while the four Vedas contained sacred knowledge, the Natya Shastra made that knowledge accessible through performance. Whether we see this as history or symbolism, it shows the special place these texts hold in Indian thought. Many people think the Natya Shastra is simply a book about drama. In reality, it is much more than that. It is written by Bharat Muni around 2nd century BCE. It is a complete guide to the performing arts, spread across 36 chapters. It discusses theater, dance, music, acting, stage design, costumes, makeup, gestures, emotions, poetry, aesthetics, and performance. Few books in the world attempt something so broad. In the Western tradition, Aristotle's Poetics is often seen as the starting point of literary criticism. In India, a similar place is held by the Natya Shastra. Yet, the two works are different in spirit. Aristotle mainly examined tragedy and dramatic structure. Bharat Muni looked at a larger question. He wanted to understand what happens inside us when we experience art. Why do we laugh? Why do we feel sorrow? Why do some performances stay in our hearts long after they end? While searching for these answers, Bharat Muni developed an idea that would shape Indian aesthetics for centuries, and he called it Ras. This single idea became the heart of Indian literary and artistic thought. To understand Indian aesthetics, journey must now move from the stage itself to the emotions created with the audience. When Bharat Muni looked at a great performance, he noticed something interesting. The actor was not really in love, yet the audience felt love. The actor was not suffering, yet the audience felt sorrow. The actor was not raised an important question. If the emotions are not real, then where do they come from and why do they feel so powerful? To answer all these questions, Bharat Muni made a distinction between two important ideas, bhav and ras. At first, they may seem similar, but they are not the same. Bhav, it is an emotion expressed by the performer or a character. Ras, it is the emotion experienced by the audience. In simple words, bhav belongs to the stage, while ras belongs to the spectator. Bhav is shown, ras is felt. Now imagine Hamlet standing alone and grieving over the tragedies of his life.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
The sorrows expressed by Hamlet is bhav. But when we watch him and feel sympathy, sadness, or compassion, that feeling inside us becomes ras. The same principle works in every form of art. The emotions presented before us is bhav. The emotional flavor we experience is ras. The word ras literally means juice, a sense, taste, or flavor. Think of a ripe mango. People do not remember that fruit because of its shape. They remember its sweetness, its flavor, its essence. In the same way, Bharat believed that the true value of art lies in the emotional flavor it creates. That emotional flavor is called ras. But Bharat Muni was not satisfied with simply saying that art creates emotions. He wanted to understand how it happens, what exactly transforms a performance into an emotional experience. To explain this process, he developed what later became famous as the Ras formula or the Ras Sutra. According to Bharat Muni, Ras is created through the combination of Vibhav, Anubhav, and Vyabhichari Bhav. These elements work together to produce the final emotional experience. Just as different ingredients come together to create a meal, different emotional elements come together to create ras. First element is Vibhav. It means the cause or the source of an emotion. It is the person, object, situation, or event that starts an emotional response. In a love story, the meeting of two lovers may become the Vibhav. In a tragedy, a loss or a separation may become the Vibhav. It is the spark that begins everything. The second element is Anubhav. Once an emotion is created, it needs to be expressed. This expression appears through facial expression, gestures, movements, words, and actions. A smile, a tear, a trembling voice, a lowered head, a joyful laugh. Ha, ha, ha. All these are examples of Anubhav. They reveal the inner emotions to the audience. The third element is Vyabhichari Bhav. It is also called Sanchari Bhav. These are temporary emotions that support the main emotion. Human feelings are never simple. Love may be accompanied by hope, anxiety, excitement, fear. Courage may be accompanied by doubt and determination. Grief may be accompanied by loneliness and helplessness. These passing emotions come and go, but they help strengthen the final experience. To understand this process more clearly, let us imagine Romeo and Juliet. For the first time, when Romeo sees Juliet, Juliet becomes the Vibhav, the cause that awakens love. Romeo's words, expressions, and actions become the Anubhav. His excitement, nervousness, hope, fear become the Vyabhichari Bhav or Sanchari Bhav. Together, these elements create an emotional experience in the audience. And the audience does not simply observe love, they feel it. And that feeling becomes Shringara. Yet, Bharat Muni believed there was something even deeper. Behind every ras, beneath all the changing emotions, lies a permanent emotion, and that remains steady throughout the experience. And he called this as Thai Bhav, the permanent or dominant emotions. If the temporary emotions are like waves, the Sthai Bhav is like the ocean. Beneath them, there are many emotions. The waves rise and fall, but the ocean remains. In Shringaras, the Sthai Bhav is Rati, or called love. In Karun Bhav, in Karun Ras, it is shock or grief. In Veer Ras, it is Utsah or courage. Every ras grows from its own Sthai Bhav. With this idea, Bharat Muni created one of the most complete explanations of human emotion found anywhere in the ancient world. Art was no longer just entertainment. It became a way of understanding the emotions life of human being. And once Bharat understood how emotion was created, he moved to an even bigger question. If ras is the sound of art, how many rasas are there? His answer gave us one of the most famous ideas in Indian culture, the navras, the nine great emotional flavors of human experience. Once Bharat Muni explained how ras is created, another question naturally followed. It creates, if art creates emotional experience, how many such experiences are there? Are human emotions endless? Or can they be understood through a pattern? Now, Bharat Muni believed that although human feelings appear countless, they can be grouped into a small number of fundamental emotional experiences. These became known as Navras, the nine ras. According to Bharat Muni, every great story, every drama, every poem, every performance drawn its power from one or more of these rases. Together, they form a map of emotional life. Originally, Bharat described eight ras in the natyashastra. Later, scholars added a ninth ras, which is called shant ras, and together they became known as navras. The first and perhaps the most celebrated is Shringar ras, the ras of love, beauty, attraction, harmony. Its Thai verb is rati, meaning love. This ras appears whenever we experience affection, romance, admiration, beauty. From the love of Romeo and Juliet to the romantic poetry of John Keats, Shringar remains one of the most powerful emotional experiences in literature and art. It reminds us that love is not merely an emotion, it is often the force that gives meaning to life itself. The second is Hasya Ras, the ras of laughter and joy. Its Thai verb is hasya, meaning mirth or amusement. Wherever humor appears, wherever people laugh at human weakness, misunderstandings, or playful situations, hasya ras comes to life. Comedy may seem light-hearted, but Bharat recognized its importance because laughter has power to bring people together and offer relief from life burdens. The third is Karun Ras, the ras of sorrow, compassion, sympathy. Its Thai bhav is shok, meaning grief. This ras emerge when we witnesses suffering, loss, separation, tragedy, the fall of King Lear, and the struggle of Tom Hardy's heroine Tess, or the pain of tragic hero, all awakens Karun Ras. Yet, Bharat's insight was remarkable. He believed that even sorrow can become beautiful when transformed through art. The audience experiences grief, but in a way that depends understanding rather than causing despair. The fourth is Rodra, the rust of anger, fury, wrath. Its Thai bhav is Krodh. This rust appears when injustice, betrayal, cruelty, or conflict awakens intense anger. The destructive rage of characters in Macbeth and Othello can be understood through Rodrus. It reveals the fierce and dangerous energies that exist within human nature. The fifth is Virus, the rus of courage, heroism, and determination. And Thai Bhav is Utsah, courage, enthusiasm, energy. Whenever individuals rise above fear and face challenges with strength, Virus appears. Epic heroes, freedom fighters, warriors, and the ordinary people who show extraordinary courage all embody this rus. It celebrates the human ability to act with confidence even in difficult circumstances.
The sixth rus is Bhyanak rus, the rus of fear and terror. Its Thai bhav is Bhay, darkness, uncertainty, danger, and the unknown give rise to this rus. Gothic novels, horror stories, and moments of suspense often depend upon Bhyanak rus. Through art, people explore fear in a safe place.
The seventh is Vibhats Ras, the rus of disgust and revulsion. Its Thai bhav is Jugupsa, meaning disgust. This rus appears when we encounter something morally, physically, emotionally disturbing. Bharat included even this unpleasant emotion because he understood that art reflects the whole human experience, not only its pleasant aspects. Now, the eighth is Adbhut Ras, the rus of wonder, amazement, wow, and the curiosity. Its Thai bhav is Visamya, meaning astonishment. Whenever we encounter something extraordinary, mysterious, magical, Adbhut awakens. It is a feeling a child experiences by seeing something remarkable for the first time. It is also the feeling that great literature often creates when it reveals new possibilities of life and imagination. For centuries, these eight trusts formed the foundation of Indian aesthetics. Yet many thinkers tell that something was still missing. Human life was not only about love, laughter, sorrow, anger, courage, fear, disgust, and wonder. There was another experience beyond all these emotions, an experience of inner peace. Oh, this led to addition of ninth ras, Shant ras. In Sthai Bhav, its Sthai Bhav is Sham, meaning tranquility or peace. Unlike the other ras, Shant does not arise from the excitement or strong emotion. Instead, it emerges when the mind becomes calm, balanced, and free from the disturbance. Many scholars later considered Shant the highest ras because it points towards spiritual peace and self realization. Now, together, these nine rasas create a complete emotional map of human life: love and laughter, grief and anger, courage and fear, disgust and wonder, and finally, peace. Every major emotional experience finds a place within the system. Bharat Muni was not simply describing literature, he was describing human nature. Yet the story of Ras did not end with Bharat Muni. Nearly 1,000 years later, a philosopher from Kashmir would look at the same theory and take it even deeper. He would argue that Ras is not only an emotional experience, no, no, it is also a spiritual experience. His name was Abhinavagupta.
In art, emotion is no longer personal, it becomes universal.
One of the greatest philosophers, aesthetician, and literary critic in Indian history. Abhinavagupta lived in Kashmir during the 10th and early 11th century. He was not only a literary critic but also a philosopher, theologian, and spiritual thinker. His most famous contribution to aesthetics was a commentary on the natyashastra, which is called Abhinav Bharati. Through this work, he reinterpreted Bharat Muni's ideas and gave them a new philosophical depth. Bharat Muni had explained how rasa is produced and experienced. Abhinavagupta asked a different question. Why does the experience of art sometimes feel so special? Why do we become completely absorbed in a poem or a play or a story? Why so? Why do we sometimes forget ourselves while watching a great performance? According to Abhinavagupta, the experience of rust is not an ordinary emotion. In everyday's life, our emotions are connected to personal worries, personal desires, and personal experience. If we feel grief in real life, it usually brings pain. If we feel fear, it often causes anxiety. But in art, something different happens. When we watch a tragedy on stage, we know that the events are not actually happening to us. Yet we still feel the emotions deeply. We experience sorrow without being personally wounded by it. We experience fear without facing real danger. We experience love without becoming part of story. So, art creates a special space where emotion can be enjoyed without the burdens of ordinary life. This is why Abhinavagupta believed that Ras is more than emotion, of aesthetic bliss. For a brief moment, we move beyond our individual concern and participate in something universal. And this experience no longer belongs only to one character or one story. It becomes an experience shared by all human beings. Now, imagine reading a beautiful poem about loss. The poem may describe the sorrow of a particular person, but while reading it, you do not think only about the person. Instead, you connect with the universal experience of loss. The emotion becomes larger than any single individual. According to Abhinavagupta, this transformation is what makes great art so powerful. To explain this idea, Abhinavagupta used the concept of Anand, meaning bliss. He argued that the highest aesthetic experiences bring a kind of joy that resembles spiritual fulfillment. This does not mean that every poem becomes a religious experience. Rather, it means that art has the power to lift us beyond our ordinary concern and give us a glimpse of something deeper and more universal. For this reason, many scholars described Abhinavagupta's theory as spiritual interpretation of Ras, while Bharat Muni explained how emotions are created. Abhinavagupta explained why those emotions can feel meaningful and transformative. Another important idea introduced by Abhinavagupta is the concept of Sahidra. The word means one who has heart, one whose heart responds. According to him, not every viewer experiences art in the same way. Some people watch a play and remain unaffected. Others are deeply moved by it. The difference lies in the sensitivity of the spectator. A Sahidra is a person who has the ability to appreciate and respond to artistic beauty. Such a person is emotionally sensitive, imaginative, and receptive. When a poem presents a feeling, the Sahidra is able to connect with it. When a drama creates a mood, the Sahidra enters the mood fully. This idea explains something we observe even today. Two people may watch the same film. One person forgets it immediately, the other thinks about it for days. Two readers may read the same poem. One see only, the other discover layers of meaning and emotions. So, according to Abhinavagupta, the second person is closer to being a Sahidra. If Ras is the emotional experience felt by the audience, then how does that experience reach them in the first place? How does an actor communicate love, grief, anger, courage, and fear? How does a performer make an audience laugh, cry, or sit in complete silence? Bharat
మీకు ఇన్ని బ్రాండ్లు కొనేకి డబ్బులు ఆడికెళ్ళి వచ్చినాయిరా ఆన్లైన్ లో ఆఫర్స్ కొన్నావు చెప్పు బాబాయ్ ఆన్లైన్
Muni believed that this happens through Abhinaya, the art of expression. The word Abhinaya literally means to carry feet towards. In other words, it is the process through which the performer carries emotion, ideas, experience towards the audience. A great actor does not simply speak lines. A great actor transforms words into living emotions. Through Abhinaya, the audience is able to enter the emotional world of the performance. In the natyashastra, Bharat Muni identified four major types of Abhinaya. The first is Angik Abhinaya. This is expression through the body. Every movement of the hands, gestures, posture, turn of head, and every expression of the face belongs to Angik Abhinaya. A confident posture may suggest courage, a trembling body may reveal fear. The second is Vachik Abhinaya, expression through speech and voice. Here, the performer uses language, dialogue, tone, rhythm, pronunciation to communicate meaning. The same sentence can express love, anger, fear, sarcasm, depending on how it is spoken. The third is Aharya Bhinaya, expression through external appearance. This includes costume,
Mogembo. Khushu.
makeup, ornaments, stage design, visible representation. A king should look like a king. A warrior should appear as a warrior. The external appearance helps to create the world of the performance and prepares the audience to enter the world. The fourth and the most subtle form is Sattvic Abhinaya. Bharat Muni considered this the deepest form of expression. While the other forms depend on body, voice, experience, appearance, Sattvic Abhinaya comes from the inner emotional state of performer. Tears that arises naturally, genuine trembling, authentic joy, real emotional intensity. Now these belongs to Sattvic Abhinaya. This is what separates a skilled performer from a truly great performer. The audience can often sense the difference between emotions that are merely acted or the emotions that feel completely real. When inner feeling and outer expression come together, the emotional impact becomes much stronger. The natyashastra has now explained how emotions are created, how they are expressed, and how they are experienced. But yet another question remains: what gives poetry its deepest power? Is poetry beautiful because of its emotions, because of its words, or because of something hidden beneath the words themselves? For centuries, scholars discussed poetry in terms of emotions, performance, and artistic beauty. Yet, a question continued to puzzle literary thinkers. When we read a great poem, what exactly makes it great? Is it the words themselves? Is it the story? Is it the emotions? Or is there something deeper? In the ninth century, a remarkable scholar named Anandavardhana offered an answer. His ideas were presented in a famous work called Dhvanyaloka. Through this text, he introduced one of the most influential theory in Indian criticism, theory of Dhvani. The word Dhvani literally means sound, echo, resonance, or suggestion. But Anandavardhana used the word in a special sense. According to him, the deepest meaning of poetry is often not stated directly. It is suggested. Great poetry does not merely tell us something. It makes us feel something beyond the words themselves.
The soul of poetry lies not in what words say, but in what they suggest.
Now think about everyday language. When someone says, the sun has risen, the meaning is clear and direct. There is nothing hidden. But in poetry, a poet may describe an evening sky, falling leaves, or a silent river. On the surface, they are simply description. Yet somehow they make us think about time, memory, loneliness, beauty, and mortality. To explain this idea, Anandavardhana described three levels of meaning, which found in our language. These three levels became one of the most important concepts in Indian poetics. The first level is Abhida, the literal meaning. This is direct meaning of words. If someone says the village is on the Ganga, the literal meaning suggests that the village stands on the river itself. This is the basic level of understanding. The second level is Lakshana, the indicated or implied meaning. Sometimes the literal meaning does not complete sense. So we move beyond it. In the sentence, the village is on the Ganga, we understand that the village is actually on the banks of Ganga, not on water itself. Here, the meaning shift from the literal sense to the implied sense, and this is called Lakshana. The third and the most important level is Vyanjana, means the suggested meaning. This is the meaning that is not directly stated and not merely implied. It is deeper significance that emerges through suggestions. It touches the imagination and emotions of the reader. According to Anandavardhana, this level is true soul of poetry. Now imagine a poet describing autumn leaves slowly falling from a tree. Literally, the poem speaks about leaves. This is Abhida. We may understand that autumn represents the passing of season, that is Lakshana. But if the poem quickly makes us think about aging, mortality, or passing of time, it means we enter the era of Vyanjana. The poet never directly says these things. This is Dhvani. Anandavardhana believed that great poetry lives in this third level. The most powerful poems do not force meaning upon the reader. Instead, they create space for the meaning to emerge naturally. This idea transformed literary criticism. Anandavardhana shifted attention towards suggestion. For him, what remains unsaid is often more important than what is said openly. To explain the importance of suggestion, he classified poetry into different levels. The highest form is Dhvani Kavya. In this type of poetry, suggestions dominates the entire work. The deepest meaning exists beneath the surface. The second type is Gunibhut Vyangya Kavya. Here, suggestion is present, but it is not the central feature. The literal meaning remains more important, but the suggested meaning plays a supporting role. The third type is Chitrakavya. This form focuses mainly on verbal beauty, clever language, and decorative effect. For Anandavardhana, this is the lowest form of poetry because it appeals more to the ear than to the imagination. To understand Dhavni more clearly, consider the poetry of John Keats. When Keats writes about autumn, ripening fruit, and fading sunlight, he is not simply describing nature. Beneath those images lies a meditation on time, change, maturity, and the beauty of things that do not last forever. In Anand Vardhan's term, this is Dhavni at work. Long before Anandavardhana developed the theory of Dhvani, another thinker had already begun exploring an even deeper question. Before we ask what words suggest, we must first ask a more basic question. How do words mean anything at all? How does a simple sound traveling through the air suddenly create understanding inside the human mind? Now, this question fascinated one of the Indian greatest philosopher of language, Bhartrihari. He lived around the 5th century and presented his ideas in the important work Vakyapadiya. His writings explored the relationship between language, thought, meaning, and reality itself. At first, language appears simple. Someone speaks a word, another person hears it, and communication takes place. But Bhartrihari believed that the process is far more mysterious. A spoken word is only a collection of sound. Yet somehow those sounds produce a complete meaning. How does this happen? To explain this phenomenon, Bhartrihari proposed the theory of Sphota. The word Sphota literally meaning bursting forth or sudden revelation. According to him, meaning does not arrive piece by piece. Instead, it appears suddenly as a complete flash of understanding.
Listen. Meaning is not heard piece by piece. It appears in a single flash.
Imagine hearing a sentence, you do not fully understand its meaning after hearing the first word, nor after hearing the second. Understanding arrives only when the whole sentence is completed. At that moment, the meaning seems to appear instantly within the mind. This sudden appearance of meaning is what Bhartrihari called support. According to this theory, The sounds we hear are not meanings itself. They are only vehicles carrying meaning. The actual meaning emerges through a mental revelation that happens beyond the sound. Sound belongs to the external world. Support belongs to understanding. To clarify this distinction, Bhartrihari separated Dhvani and support. Dhvani refers to the physical sound produced by speech. Different people pronounce words differently.
Voices change, accents change, pronunciation vary from region to region.
Yet the meaning offered remains the same. The reason, Bhartrihari argued, is that meaning does not depend entirely on sound. The stable meaning that appears within the mind is support. Now, let us consider it with example. A word may be spoken softly, loudly, quickly, slowly. Different speakers may pronounce it in different ways. Yet, listeners still understand the same meaning. This suggests that something more permanent exists beneath the changing sound. And this is called support. Another important concept is Bhartrihari's philosophy is pratibha. Pratibha refers to the sudden intuitive insight through which understanding becomes possible. It is that moment when meaning becomes clear without deliberate analysis. We experience it constantly in daily life, yet rarely notice it. Meaning simply appears almost effortlessly within consciousness. For Bhartrihari, language was not merely a tool for communication. It was deeply connected to human thought. He believed that thought and language cannot be completely separated. We understand the world through language, and language shapes the way we understand reality. Now, this idea eventually led him to understand the most profound concept, Shabd Brahm. Now, the term combines two words, Shabd, which means sound or word, and Brahm, which means ultimate reality. Bhartrihari argued that language is not simply something humans use. It is woven into the very structure of existence. Whether one accepts this idea philosophically or symbolically, it reveals the extraordinary depth of Bhartrihari thinking. He was not simply studying grammar, he was exploring the relationship between language, consciousness, and reality. Through support, Bhartrihari explained how meaning suddenly appears in the mind. Through pratibha, he explained role of intuition in understanding. And through Shabd Brahm, he connected language to the deepest question of existence. Together, these three ideas made him one of the most influential philosophers in the history of Indian thought. As Indian literary criticism continued to develop, scholars began asking now a different question. If poetry has power to move us, what exactly creates its beauty? Is beauty created by emotions, by meaning, or by the way language is used? One of the earliest and most influential answers came from a scholar named Bhamaha, who lived around the 7th century. His ideas are preserved in an important work called alamkara. The very little of book reveals its central belief. For Bhamaha, the beauty of poetry lies in alankara, ornament. The word alankar literally means ornament, decoration, or embellishment. Just as jewelry enhances physical beauty, literary ornaments enhances the beauty of language. According to Bhamaha, poetry becomes attractive and memorable because of these artistic devices.
Just as ornaments beautify the body, alamkaras beautify poetry.
To understand this idea, think about ordinary speech. A person may simply say, "She is beautiful." This statement is clear, but it lacks artistic charm. A poet, however, he might say, "Her face."
क्या लिखूं तेरी सूरत तारीफ में, अल्फाज खत्म हो गए तेरी अदाएं देख देख कर.
This ambiguity comes from alankar. Bhama believed that literary ornaments are not merely decoration, they are essential. Through alankar, language becomes imaginative, vivid, and memorable. Over time, scholars identified many different kinds of alankar, but several became especially important. One of the most famous is Upma Alankar or simile. When we say her face is like the moon, so we are using simile. Another important ornament is Rupak or metaphor. Unlike simile, a metaphor does not say that one thing is like another. Instead, we call it time is a thief, which creates a stronger and a more direct comparison. The third ornament is Anupras, that is alliteration. The repeated sounds produce musical effect. Another important figure is Utpreksha, that is imaginative comparison. In Utpreksha, the poet imagines possibilities beyond ordinary reality. As literary theory developed, now alankars were often divided into two broad categories. The first is Shabda Alankar, ornaments based on sound. The another is Artha Alankar, ornaments based on meaning. Here, beauty arises from ideas. For Bhama, these ornaments were the foundation of poetic beauty. A poem without alankar appeared plain and ordinary. A poem enriched with alankar gained elegance, charm, artistic power. One such scholar was Vamana, who lived about a centuries later. He proposed a very different theory. According to him, the real soul of poetry is not ornament. No, 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 no. It is style. The way a poet writes matters more than the ornaments he uses. This idea became known as the theory of Riti, and it would become one of the most influential alternatives to Alankar theory. Around the 8th century, a scholar named Vamana began to think the nature of poetic beauty. While earlier critics focused on ornaments, Vamana believed that something more fundamental was at work. His ideas were presented in a text called Kavya Alankar Sutra. Vaman's most famous statement is simple yet powerful. Riti Ratma Kavasya means style is the soul of poetry. According to Vaman, ornaments may decorate a poem, but style gives it life.
Behold the three paths of expression: the graceful, the grand, and the balanced. Style is the soul of poetry.
Two poets may describe the same event, use similar words, and even employ similar figures. Yet one poem may feel graceful while other feels heavy. The difference lies in style. Riti refers to the spatial arrangement of words, expression, linguistic qualities that create a particular artistic effect. It is not merely what a poet says, it is how the poet says it. To explain this idea, Vaman identified three major literary styles. The first is Vedarbhi Riti. This style is smooth, elegant, gentle, and graceful. It avoids unnecessary complexity and creates a feeling of natural beauty. The second is Godi Riti. This style is energetic, elaborate, and grand. It often uses powerful expression, long compounds, and impressive language. The third is Panchali Riti. This style occupies a middle position between the previous two. It combines grace with strength and simplicity with elegance. Because of the balance, Panchali was often considered as highly versatile. Now, the debate between Bhama and Vaman reveals something important about Indian literary criticism. Scholars were not simply accepting earlier ideas, they were constantly questioning, refining, and expanding them. Each theory tried to answer the same question from a different angles. That what makes literature beautiful? Now another scholar entered into this discussion, and according to him, poetic beauty lies in indirect expression, in saying something without saying it directly. His name was Kuntaka, and his famous theory became known as Vakrokti, theory of oblique expression. As the discussion about poetry continued, this scholar was Kuntak, who lived around 10th century. His ideas are preserved in a work called Vakrokti Jivit, which literally means the life of oblique expression. The title itself reveals his central argument. According to Kuntak, the life and the soul of poetry is Vakrokti. The word Vakra means crooked, curved, indirect, or oblique. Ukti means expression or statement. Together, Vakrokti means indirect or unusual expression. At first, the word crooked may sound negative, but Kuntak used in a positive sense. He believed that ordinary language communicates directly, while poetry communicates indirectly. It is this indirectness that creates beauty. Imagine
The life of poetry lies in creative expression.
two people expressing the same idea. One person says, "The evening is beautiful." A poet says, "The sky is slowly wrapping itself in golden silence." Now, both sentences describe the same moment. Yet, the second expression feels more artistic, more memorable, and more imaginative. According to Kuntak, this difference is created by Vakrokti. For Kuntak, great poetry never speaks in a completely straightforward manner. It blends language, reshapes expression, and presents ideas from the unexpected angles. This theory helps explain why poetry often feels different from ordinary communication. In everyday speech, efficiency is important. We simply want to convey information. He believed that Vakrokti can operate at many different levels of language. Sometimes it appears in the choice of individual words, sometimes in sentence structure, or sometimes it shapes the entire composition. Consider one of the Shakespeare's most famous lines. "Shall I compare thee to a summer day?" Shakespeare could have simply said, "You are beautiful." Instead, he chooses a more imaginative path. The indirect comparison creates a richer emotional experience. And in terms of Kuntak, this is called Vakrokti. Through this theory, Kuntak shifted attention away from ornament alone and towards artistic expression itself. Beauty does not arise merely because a poet uses decorative device, but it arises because language is transformed into something fresh, surprising, and imaginative. A poem may contain many beautiful elements, but if those elements do not fit together, the overall effect may be weakened. Now, this concern led another scholar to develop a theory based on harmony, balance, and appropriateness. His name was Kshemendra, and this theory became known as Auchitya, the theory of propriety. By the 11th century, Indian literary criticism had become rich with theories. Some critics emphasized emotion, others focused on suggestion, style, ornament, or expression. Yet, Kshemendra noticed a simple problem. A literary work may contain many excellent parts, but excellence in individual parts does not automatically create excellence in the whole. Kshemendra presented his ideas in a work called Auchitya Vichar Charcha. This central concept of this work is Auchitya, usually translated as propriety and appropriateness or fitness. According to Kshemendra, every element in a literary work must be appropriate to its context. Characters, emotions, languages, actions, descriptions, and situations should all fit together harmoniously. Now, to understand this idea, imagine a tragic scene in which a king has just lost his kingdom and family. The atmosphere is serious and emotional. Suddenly, a comic character enters and begins making jokes. Ha ha ha. Even if the jokes are clever, they may feel out of the place. The problem is not that comedy is bad. The problem is that the comedy is inappropriate to the situation. Now, this violation of harmony weakens its artistic effect. For Kshemendra, successful literature depends upon the proper relationship between all its parts. Every element must support the overall purpose of the work. A heroic character should speak in a manner suitable to heroism. A peaceful scene used language appropriate to serenity. A tragic situation should evoke emotion suitable to tragedy. In this sense, Auchitya functions almost like an invisible principle guiding the entire work. Readers may not consciously notice it, but they immediately sense when it is absent. His theory is important because it brings balance to earlier debates. Instead of asking whether emotion, ornament, style, or suggestion is the single soul of poetry, he focused on the relationship between all these elements. Now, this idea remains relevant even today. Whether we read a poem, watch a film, or experience a play, we expect consistency between character, mood, language, and theme. When the consistency breaks, the illusion is weakened. He recognized this principle near 1,000 years ago. By this stage, Indian aesthetics has developed a remarkably rich collection. Bharata Muni had explained emotions through Rasa. Abhinavagupta had deepened it through philosophy. Anandavardhana had explored suggestion through Dhvani. Bhartrihari had examined language through Sphota. Bhamaha had celebrated ornament. Vamana had defended style. Kuntaka has praised indirect expression. Kshemendra had emphasized appropriateness. Yet one important text still remains in our journey, a work that simplified and organized many dramatic ideas found in natyashastra. That work is The Shrew, written by Dhananjaya, and it forms the next chapter in the story of Indian aesthetics. This covered many different subjects and contained a huge amount of information. For performers, writers, students of drama, a more systematic guide was needed. This need was fulfilled by Dhananjaya, a scholar who lived around the 10th century. His most famous work is called The Shrew, that is, 10 forms. Although inspired by Natyashastra, The Shrew is not merely a summary, it reorganizes dramatic theory in a clear and more practical manner. Dhananjaya's goal was simple. He wanted to explain how drama works, what makes a successful play, how should action move from beginning to end.
Every story has its own dramatic form.
10 forms of drama. Dhananjaya classified dramatic works into 10 major categories. This includes different dramatic structures and forms. The names and technical details are numerous. The important point is that Dhananjaya tried to organize dramatic literature into one clear category. Drama was no longer viewed as a single form. It could appear in different shapes. But Dhananjaya's contribution goes far beyond classification. Every story moves forward through a series of stages. A drama does not begin with success, it begins with a goal, passes through struggle, and eventually reaches a conclusion. To explain this process, he described 5 stages of action, that is called avastha. The first stage is arambh, meaning the beginning. This is the moment when the central objective or desire first appears. The journey has begun now. The second stage is prayatan, that is effort. The character now take action to achieve their goal. Obstacles appears, challenges arises, and the struggle becomes visible. The third stage is pratyasha, means hope of attainment. Now at this point, success begins to seem possible. The goal is not yet achieved, but the characters can now see a path towards it. The next stage is niyatapti. It means certainty. The outcome is becoming clear. The audience begins to sense that success is almost within reach. The last and the final stage is phalagam. It means attainment of result. The journey reaches its conclusion. The goal is achieved or the consequences of failure became fully visible. These 5 stages reveal something important. A dramatic story is not a random collection of events. It is carefully organized movements from desire to fulfillment. Now, Dhananjaya also discussed Sandhi, which translated as dramatic juncture or connection. If the avasthas are the major stages of a story, the sandhis are the links that connect those stages together. They ensure that movement from one phase of the narrative to another feels natural and coherent. Without proper sandhis, a drama becomes fragmented. Events may occur, but they do not feel connected. Another important contribution of the shrew is discussion of vritti, that is dramatic style. Dhananjay identified 4 major vritti that shape the character of a performance. The first is Bharti vritti, which means speech, dialogue, verbal expression. It is particularly important when language itself carries much of dramatic power. The another and the second is Satvati vritti. Now, this style is associated with heroism, dignity, courage, noble emotion. It often appears in serious and elevated dramatic situations. The third is Keshiki vritti. The style is graceful, delicate, romantic, elegant. It is closely associated with beauty, love, aesthetic refinement. The fourth is Arbhati vritti. This style is energetic, vigorous, and forceful. It is suited to scenes involving actions, conflict, excitement, and dramatic intensity. Together, these vritti shows that drama can express different moods through different style of presentation. A romantic scene requires a different dramatic approach than a heroic battle. He recognized that form and content must work together. By now, our journey through Indian aesthetics has introduced many great thinkers and many different theories. Yet before we conclude, one final comparison remains. A comparison between two of the most influential ideas in world literary criticism. For thousands of years, human beings have asked the same question. Why do we enjoy stories that makes us cry? Why do we willingly watch tragedy, suffering, loss, and conflict? Why does art affect us so deeply? Ancient Greece and ancient India both try to answer this question. In Greece, the answer came from Aristotle. In India, the answer came from Bharata Muni. Their ideas became two of the most influential theories in the history of aesthetics, catharsis and rasa. Around the 4th century, Aristotle wrote a famous work called Poetics. In this work, he analyzed Greek tragedy and tried to explain why audiences are attracted to tragic stories. Tragedy produced 2 major emotions in the audience, pity and fear. We feel fear because we recognize that similar suffering could happen to us. As the drama unfolds, these emotions builds up inside the audience. By the end of the play, they are released. This effect is called catharsis. So it means purification and cleansing. These emotions are then released, leaving the audience emotionally purified. You enter the theatre carrying emotion. You leave feeling lighter. Now let us turn to Bharata Muni. When Bharat discussed drama in natyashastra, he approached the question from a completely different direction. For him, the purpose of art is not to remove emotions. The purpose of art is to transform them into aesthetic experience. And this experience is called Rasa. When we watch a tragic scene, Bharat does not say that the grief should be expelled from the mind. Instead, grief is experienced in a refined and artistic form.
मुझे अपने घर जाना है मुझे घर जाना है
The audience savors it, feels it, reflects upon it, and ultimately enjoys it as an aesthetic experience. Now, this enjoyment is Ras. Catharsis focuses on release. Ras focus on experience. Catharsis purifies emotion. Ras elevates emotion. Catharsis ends with relief. And Ras ends with delight. Both theory offers valuable insights. Catharsis explains why emotional release feels satisfying, and Ras explains why emotional experience itself can become beautiful. One from Greece, one from India, and both trying to understand the mysteries of human emotion. Before we conclude our journey, let us gather all the major thinkers in one place and see how each contributed to Indian aesthetics. First comes Bharata Muni, usually placed around the 2nd century. His great work is Natyashastra. He introduced theory of ras and explained bhav, vibhav, anubhav, sahibhav, vyabhichari bhav, and 4 types of Abhinaya. And he laid the foundation of Indian aesthetics. Next comes Bhartrihari, around 5th century. His important text is Vakyapadya. He developed the theory of Sphota and introduced ideas such as Pratibha and Shabdabram. He explored the relationship between language and meaning. Then comes Bhamaha, around 7th century. His work is Kavya Alankar. He developed Alankar theory and argued that literary ornaments create poetic beauty. After him comes Vamana, around the 8th century. His text is Kavya Alankar Sutra. He proposed Riti theory and famously declared that style is the soul of poetry. Next comes Anandavardhana, around the 9th century, dhvanyaloka. He introduced Dhvani theory and argued that suggestion is the soul of poetry. Then comes Abhinavagupta, around the 10th and 11th century. His major contribution is Abhinavagupta, a famous commentary on natyashastra. He deepened Ras theory and explained the concept of sahidra and aesthetic bliss. Now, the turn is of Dhananjaya, around the 10th century. His work is Dasharupa. He organized dramatic theory through concepts like avastha, sandhi, vritti, and 10 dramatic forms. Then comes Kuntaka. Around the 10th century, his work Vakrokti Jivit. He developed Vakrokti theory and explained the beauty of indirect expression. Finally comes Kshemendra, around the 11th century. His text is Auchitya Vichar Charcha. He developed Auchitya theory and emphasized appropriateness and harmony in literature. Now, 9 major thinkers, more than 1,000 years of intellectual development.
Thank you for watching Megha Discourse. I hope this journey through Indian literary aesthetics helped you learn something new. See you in the next video.